and welcome to this episode of Season 3 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn and often guests talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late and much missed John Popham. So let's do a weather check. Sweyn, how are you and how's the weather been this week where you are?
I'm in Kirkwall in Orkney as usual. We're all fine here, I think. The weather is not as brilliant as it was last week, but quite good.
And our special guest today, Jamie Robson. Jamie, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather there?
Good morning, everyone. I am just south of Sweyn. I'm on the mainland, but right up at the top in the county of Caithness. It was glorious earlier on, just so warm and sunny, but it's got a bit overcast now, but it's not raining, so I'm chuckling.
Yeah, good. And here in Birmingham, in the Midlands of England, it's kind of white clouds in the sky, so I'm not sure how it's going to be later on. Lovely at the weekend though, and also torrential rain, so a mixture of all seasons, which we welcome. Jamie, you're very welcome to the show. We will go through a few dates and stuff before we come to you, but please relax and thanks for coming on the show. Sweyn, do you want to go ahead lead off with the dates?
Yes, we've got a couple of awareness months. I think the awareness stuff during the summer is a bit thinner than it is at other times of the year, because so the first one I've chosen is called Good Care Month 2023, and it seems to be run by Hertfordshire, but none the worse for that. What they say is that with both an aging population and individuals of all ages with more complex needs that require additional social care support, there's an increasing requirement to recruit and retain staff in the adult social care sector. Well, this is something that John Popham was always very keen to apply digital stuff to make anything that could be made better in that work. And they say in Hertfordshire alone, they currently need to recruit around 4,000 paid carers every year. And the Good Care campaign is about celebrating the great work that the staff do each and every day and sharing it via the campaign. So that's it. They're campaigning to raise the profile of social care and to promote the career prospects in care. And I know that everywhere, getting carers, recruiting good quality, high quality, properly trained carers is really difficult.
Absolutely. I would say echo the same for Birmingham and all the Midlands areas. Difficult. And we're all going to need this, so we should all have an investment in making it happen. Make it go well for all of us. Yeah.
Oh, and I've just realized I cannot display the next one for technical reasons, so I will just speak about it. It's the Talk to Us campaign, July, again, the whole of July, and it's an annual awareness raising campaign by the Samaritans. And they're challenging the UK to become better listeners by sharing expert tips on how to be a better listener. So throughout July, the Samaritans branches will be holding events to do with this as well, and will be featuring it on their Facebook page and their Twitter feed. I wonder if I can maybe just get this to share just quickly. It doesn't really give a link, as sometimes these things do. It just has an image, and it sometimes. No, I can't. I'm going to give up with that because it's just ridiculous to be waffling on like this. No, so what's next, Pauline?
Well, I was just going to actually read out the Samaritans 24/7 number, which is 116-123. If anybody is in trouble, I've used them myself. I'm not ashamed to say, and they are excellent. And there's always somebody there listening and waiting to have a chat with you. So please do use them if you need them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so on to events.
My
Guernsey
goodness,
2023.
Guernsey 2023.
I think you know more about this than I do as well.
I won't go that far. Oh dear, I really am in a mess here with my windows and everything, but hey ho. Yes, the International Island Games is on again, this time in Guernsey. It's the first time since the pandemic that the games have been held, and Guernsey were supposed to hold the games in 2021, but they've had 2 years delay, as I say, because of COVID. So there is the website with the wonderful .gg for Guernsey domain name. The Island Games is held once every 2 years, and thousands of athletes, well, a couple of thousand of athletes from across the whole globe, really, from island communities, up to about 65,000 in population. And they come from everywhere from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean, from the North Atlantic to the Caribbean, and they come together to compete in a week-long mini Olympics, effectively. So there's swimming, shooting, track and field events, and there's target and endurance events and team sports such as football, basketball, and volleyball. And competitors are all take part from as young an age as 13.
Wow.
They always welcome spectators. It's an opportunity for people living in the host islands to watch live, really international standard sport on their home turf. And also Guernsey are doing really well with offering up to 10 simultaneous live streams of events every single day.
Wow.
So that's available via their website as well. So yeah, it's been sponsored until this time by the NatWest Bank. It means that athletes don't always have to look to the mainland to compete at international level. They can have a chance to represent their own community and raise the profile of even the smallest islands. A couple of the Norwegian islands only have a population of 2,000 or 3,000, and yet they send a team to the Island Games. And the big islands like Jersey and Guernsey and the Isle of Man, of course, they send huge teams, and the kind of middle-sized Scottish islands in Shetland, Orkney, and the Western Isles. So famous names you might have heard of who started in the Island Games include Mark Cavendish, cycling, Kelly Sotherton from the Isle of Wight, heptathlon and 400 meters, Matthias Sunneborn from Gotland, who is a long jumper and 200-meter sprinter, Sidonie Mothersill from the Cayman Islands, who competes in the 200 meters, and Paul Jonsson from the Faroe Islands in the swimming. All of these people have won Olympic medals as well as that. Just wanted to put a couple of stories in here that are directly related to this, kind of digital stories, because I thought a couple of things that I found were really quite good. The first is a story from from Shetland. Did I nearly say the Shetland Islands? I don't know. Did I? Where Samantha, who lives in Guernsey, had contacted the Shetland Island Games Association, because all the schools are doing projects on the games, obviously, in the run-up to the islands. And for geography, one of the tasks was to record an interview with a competitor to show in the class. And Samantha is a swimmer. And so one of the Shetland Island Games swim team captains, Adam Miller, you can see him there on the screen, and one of their youngest swimmers, Carrie Preacher, they had an online interview with her, presumably via Zoom or something like that. Doesn't look like Zoom, but it's something. And Samantha in Guernsey is volunteering as a medal mate, so maybe even we'll see her on the live streams at the medal ceremonies, who knows. And then lastly, on the games, really, we've got this beautiful story from the Guernsey Games page. Now, Guernsey doesn't have many police officers, so what they've done is they've borrowed some police officers from the Isle of Man and sworn them in as Guernsey police officers.
Excellent.
And this is one of them. And Aria here in this picture, who's I would think probably primary 3 or 4, year 3 or 4 at school, she was really pleased to get this photo at the opening ceremony with one of the Isle of Man police, because children at Aria's school had been learning all about the different islands competing in the games, and Aria's class had focused on the Isle of Man, so she'd recognized the logo on the policeman's helmet. And then the games Facebook page has shared this picture, which I think is really kind of emblematic, really, of the spirit of the games, which is to do with the core values of sportsmanship and fair play, and they happen every 2 years. And guess where they are next time? Yes, that's right, they're in Orkney. How we're going to do 10 simultaneous live streams, I don't quite know yet, but we'll do it somehow.
Fantastic. It's amazing. I was just looking at the islands that are taking part, Sweyn, and I think it's worth reading out, because some of them people won't have heard of, so I'm going to read them out. So Finland, Åland in Finland, Alderney, the Channel Islands, Bermuda in the Caribbean, Cayman Islands, Western Caribbean, Falkland Islands, South Atlantic Ocean, the Faroe Islands, North Atlantic Ocean, Frøya in the Fosen region, Gibraltar, British Overseas Territory, Gotland in Sweden, Gozo, the region of Malta, Greenland in the northern region, Guernsey, the Channel Islands, Hitra in Norway, Isle of Man, Crown Dependency, the Isle of Wight, southeast, Jersey, the Channel Islands, Minorca, the Balearic Islands, Orkney, Northern Isles of Scotland, Saaremaa in the Baltic, St Helena, South Atlantic Ocean, Sark in the Channel Islands, Shetland Islands in the British Isles, Western Isles in the British Isles, and Innismon in the British Isles. So just amazing. I mean, I was obviously looking to see if there were any Irish islands taking part as well. I mean, there are islands off Galway where the population is even smaller than the one you quoted in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And other islands up in Donegal and stuff. But I hadn't heard of this before you mentioned it to me,
Okay,
so
no, it's one of
sounds
international
fascinating.
sport's best kept secrets, I think, in some ways.
Brilliant.
But it always involves all the national sporting associations of the country that it's held in, because they have to provide the kind of officials and so on, or at least the structure. So yeah, it's quite exciting. And I'm pleased to say that both Shetland and Orkney have already won a medal after day one.
Brilliant.
Orkney won the bronze in the 10,000 meters. That was Ali Kemp, who represents Scotland in the athletics as well. And Shetland won the women's team triathlon bronze. Wow. And also, of the 3 island authorities in Scotland, not well, it is a competition. Orkney was the only one to win their first football match. So hurrah, a men's football match. Hurrah. Having said that, Western Isles is the only one of the 3 to actually have fielded a women's football team. So good luck to them as well.
Okay. Jamie, had you heard of this before, or is it new to you as well as me?
No, I've been aware of the Island Games for a few years now. But yeah, it sounds amazing. Lots of travelling involved, but it's good that it continues despite that.
Brilliant.
The stories of people travelling from the Falklands and from Ascension Island and all that sort of thing. They were saying things like, "Oh well, it's much easier now that we've got a weekly flight. Now that we don't have to do the 3-week ferry trip to South Africa to start with, or whatever it
is." Things people have to cope with that we have no idea about. Yeah.
I was just thinking that policeman isn't getting his helmet back, is he?
No, he's not, is he?
No, it looks like a permanent new home for it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well done. And Sweyn, what's your involvement with the games?
I'm giving some IT advice to the organising committee for 2025, so I'm quite keen to see how they're all doing how they're doing everything in Guernsey and.
That's 2 years away, Sweyn. So that's
yes, it is. Hopefully they'll have invented some miraculous new technology by then that'll do it all for us. AI maybe.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. And if you want to co-host, I'm up for that.
Oh yes,
yeah, great. Okay, well let's without further ado get to our special guest for today, Jamie Robson from AbilityNet. Jamie is an AbilityNet tech volunteer and administrator. Jamie's working life has been spent in administration and then IT. He's based in Caithness, as he said earlier, in the far north of mainland Scotland. In 2019, he became a volunteer for AbilityNet and was also part of the team that delivered the Digital Lifeline project in 2021. So you're very welcome to the show, Jamie. Thanks for joining us. We're always delighted to have guests, especially guests who kind of work out in the field and know what it's like dealing with people's issues, digital issues, communication, and so on a day-to-day basis. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, both.
Nice to be here. Yeah, it's great to have you. I think you're being contacted with Sweyn rather than me, so it's that's great. So we'd like to kind of go back a bit before we go to talk about your current work in digital and stuff. So can you give us a bit of an idea of how you started using digital communication, as a youth, as a young man in industry, or how was it?
Oh, well, I started off in my teens, Pauline, which, as you can imagine, wasn't yesterday. I always had an interest in technology. My very first computer was a ZX Spectrum back in 1982. And it's just sort of grown from them. I've always had a computer of some description. And I started working in IT. Oh gosh, that was in the 90s. So I started off doing PC support, technical things like that, and moved into management. And then I kind of semi-retired a couple of years ago, was looking for something to occupy my time. And I heard about AbilityNet. That was the first time I heard about them, and it just seemed a really good fit for the things that I considered important.
And what were they like as an organization then when you joined?
Yeah, just I mean, the thing that changes about AbilityNet is the demand on the services. We've maybe got a few more volunteers. As you can imagine, volunteering is such a fluid thing. You know, we sort of lose volunteers, but we also gain volunteers all the time. Some of our volunteers have been with us over 20 years because AbilityNet have been going 25 years this year.
Okay.
So we've got some really, amazing long-term volunteers. But yeah, just the spread. We work with more organizations than ever before. We work with a lot of third parties, people like Parkinson's UK, the Macular Society, RNIB, Age UK, Age Scotland. So as more and more organizations hear about us, we're getting more and more referrals, which is good.
And you have both staff and volunteers?
We've got a small, AbilityNet is quite unique in that to a degree we are self-funding because we do commercial work for universities and workplaces where we help disabled people in the workplace and disabled students. And that gives us a degree of income, which then provides the free service, which I'm a volunteer with. So it's quite a nice position to be in. We're not dependent on grants to function, which is
so you're not really enviable situation of generating your own core funding in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, we're always looking for additional funding. It doesn't quite match. Commercial world is quite up and down, especially at the moment. So but yeah, it's quite a unique and quite a fortunate situation to be in.
So you said you worked in IT in other companies and other industries. What were some of your previous roles?
I worked in the one place for 32 years. I worked at the Dounreay nuclear power establishment on the north coast of Scotland. So I started off as an administrator and then moved into IT there.
And what was that like?
It was interesting, yeah. I did sign the Official Secrets Act. I think I'm still bound by it.
Yeah.
Better move on then.
It was good. I mean, obviously, I had that interest in technology, and it gave me. I experienced a lot of technology. It was really good to get into that on a day-to-day basis and get my hands dirty, so to speak.
I mean,
what kind of communications, products or tools would you have used then?
It was very much a sort of office environment. It was all Windows PCs and laptops, traditional telephony. We hadn't quite moved into IP telephony at that point. There's a lot of legacy systems because Dounreay was built in the 60s. There was a lot of legacy systems still operating, and perhaps they still are. So yeah, it was a lot of challenges.
For many years now, Dounreay's been in a kind of decommissioning phase, hasn't it?
Allegedly, yeah.
And storage.
Yeah, but there's still an awful lot of people work there. There's probably still 1,000 people employed at any time.
Yes.
And how many would have been there when you were, employed there?
About the same, because the decommissioning is such a huge project because it was one of a kind. It was an experimental prototype. So there's no the techniques that were required to decommission it had to be almost developed from scratch because it had never been done before. So there's a lot of innovation going on to decommission parts of that site, and it will take a while yet.
Okay, so you moved on from kind of a very basic computer through what kind of steps have you been through? What kind of devices have you been through in your career?
Because it was an office environment, it was predominantly Windows machines. We didn't really use mobiles. We had Blackberries, things like that. But from a personal level, I've always been a PC person. The interesting thing about AbilityNet is that it really does widen your skills and exposes you to different technologies. Before I became a volunteer with AbilityNet, I'd never actually touched an iPad. So I have no reason to. And then now, a couple of years later, I'm perfectly happy to support iPads because I've been exposed to them. I've done a bit of training and done a bit of research. So, from a developmental point of view, it's such a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And then that's even before you get to all the accessibility stuff, which is probably the big thing that I've heard.
Please tell us more about that and the kind of things that you've kind of come across that have helped people, and you've been able to help people more than you would have been able to do with ordinary technology.
Well, it's just about being aware of some of the standard tools that are there. As you both know, every device from your most basic phone has got built-in accessibility, but most people never explore that. And there are some amazing apps out there. You both know about Seeing AI, things like that, where the camera and the microphone are used to help people who have challenges. If I can give you one example of a very simple app that really, really changed somebody's life. I had a client who was in their 90s, completely deaf, had been completely deaf for 5 years. And his wife could only communicate with him by writing little notes and passing them to him. He would then read the note and respond, so it wasn't fluid at all. So I was thinking about this, and I found an app called Google Live Transcribe. So it's a very simple app, free app. And I demonstrated this on a tablet that I had. So I just set it up in front of the client. His wife would speak to him normally. The words would come up on the screen, remarkably accurate and very, very quick. He would read this off the screen and respond to her. And suddenly they were interacting.
Wow.
And she said to me, that's the first conversation we've had in 5 years.
Oh,
Wow.
And that's just, a very, very simple app.
Yes.
Just shows you what can be done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's great hearing those kind of stories. And I'm sure, at AbilityNet, you get to hear those kind of stories all the time.
On a daily basis, because I actually work for AbilityNet on the admin side now, I'm hearing about all the success stories from the volunteers on a daily basis, and hearing all the feedback from the clients as well, which just, it's amazing. And what gets me is that the more I realize, the more I read that feedback, is if we didn't exist, a lot of people would be completely stuck because they have nobody else to turn to. They've got no family nearby. There's nobody next door who can help them, so it just reinforces how important we are as an organization, and other organizations that do the same thing.
It's a much wider selection of society, both older people and others, who are affected by some of this. I've been helping a woman in her 70s here in Kirkwall to present twice weekly theatrical performances outdoors. And I've been one of the things I've been helping her with is advertising it on Facebook, basically promoting it online. And she knows it's important, but she doesn't know what she's doing in there. And she said at one point, and this is a really energetic, enthusiastic, force of nature kind of person. She says, it kind of makes me feel how it must feel like to be illiterate, not to be able to read and write. I just can't do this stuff. Now, one of the reasons I think she can't quite get to grips with it is she's got about a 7-year-old iPad, and everything, even I can't decide whether I've tapped that thing and then waited long enough or not. So it's all of these things that they're always more than one factor to them, and I just think AbilityNet is a fantastic resource online, as well as all the volunteers. The My Computer My Way section of the website, I'm going to ignore that. Although the dogs may not ignore the doorbell that's just doorbelled. It's all over the place, and all sorts of little places here and there, and it's great that there's somewhere that people who really do get stuck and can find the contact can actually go to get help. Because I would certainly, if I wasn't helping my friend Vivia, I would certainly be handing her off towards the AbilityNet website to see if she can find anything there or help there for sure.
Please invite her on the show sometime, Sweyn, to talk about her experiences, because it's good to have people on who are learning. We're all learning all the time, and as Kira Ullman kind of
here we go.
eloquently describes.
I think I might have, yes.
We move in and out of digital exclusion, sort of depending on our job, depending on our a new piece of software depending on our needs or whatever. So it's not a static situation. And this digital equity thing, I mean, we might talk about it later if we get on to some of the stories that we cover, Jamie, about how the government has recognised there is no standard for digital inclusion really as yet, and we're all struggling a little bit, but some of us are struggling a bit more than others. So kind of your how long have you been with AbilityNet now, Jamie, would you say?
Oh, it's just over 4 years, Pauline.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And what changes have you seen? I mean, obviously the pandemic happened in those 4 years, so you would have seen some changes then or some challenges.
The pandemic was, well, for want of a better word, it was an amazing time. And we were sort of thrown into that. Obviously, the only support that we could provide for long enough was remote support. But that just showed how incredible the things that you can do with remote support is amazing. And we try and push that where we can, especially for people where we don't have volunteers nearby. So I do quite a lot of remote support, helping people all over the country. So I think it's pushed the value of remote support a lot. Things like Zoom calls for other purposes rather than just for family and friends getting together, for support purposes, online support groups. People are finding that it's still a good idea to keep those running because it helps people that aren't physically able to get out, things like that. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities and made a lot of things possible, I think. I mean, they say mother is a necessity of invention. Is that right?
Something is a necessity.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
necessity is
it's good.
mother invention. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
one.
the way.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So it's good that it's generated a lot of useful tools that we're still using now. Things like blended meetings, remote working. I mean, I work remotely for AbilityNet, and maybe that wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago.
And were these things that AbilityNet were already thinking about bringing on stream before the pandemic, or was it just the necessity that made things happen?
I mean, we always used remote support, but I think the possibilities, we're trying to push that more and more, not only for the reasons that I mentioned, but it obviously keeps our carbon footprint down to a minimum as well if we don't have to travel to see the clients.
Yeah.
And we can respond a lot quicker as well.
So go on.
I make this point over and over again, week after week after week, but to me, it really is getting to the point where remote offerings, whether it's of support or meetings or work, or whatever it is, it really is getting, in my view, to the point where it's becoming another branch of accessibility. It's a reasonable adjustment in itself that you can make, usually to your service or your product, to make it possible to interact with it, at least partly, usually mostly, remotely. And if it's a reasonable adjustment that you could be asked to make, then you're almost under, as a service provider, you are under a legal obligation to make it, because that's what the Accessibility Act says. And I think that's the next big avenue of remote stuff, is going to be in support of people's accessibility needs, whether it's caring needs or illness or just having a broken leg that week or whatever it is. I think the basic accessibility needs of the population as a whole could be quite considerably contributed to if we just more serious and rigorous about providing things remotely, as AbilityNet does.
Well, you're seeing that with the NHS, aren't you? And like the Near Me scheme, where you have video consultations, that can be massively helpful, especially when you have to travel quite a long distance to your nearest major hospital.
And how, you say AbilityNet, you kind of give remote support to people up and down the country. How wide is your network? Do you cover the whole of the British Isles, like the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland?
We try, Pauline. Yeah, I mean, we've got volunteers in all those places. We've got about 350 active volunteers at the moment, which sounds quite a lot, but obviously when you're trying to cover the whole of the UK, it's not enough. So that's why remote support allows us to reach out to those clients that we don't have anyone nearby. You discussed on one of your shows recently about some remote support I gave to a chap who was writing a book. So he is in Pauline Bay, north of Wales, and we just didn't have any volunteer coverage there, but we were able to help remotely.
Okay. And so if you, I mean, what would be the ideal number of volunteers that you would like to have, given everything equal?
Oh, is one volunteer per person too much? I don't know. It's difficult
About
to say.
40,000, would that do? Really?
Don't know. That's a good question.
It's supporting them then is the issue, because you know, people think volunteers are a free resource, but they're not. They're free. They give their time freely, obviously, very generously. The amount of volunteering goes on in this country, all over the world, actually, is amazing. But every volunteer needs support, so that has resource implications as well. Yeah, we know that is under resourced. The support of volunteers. So what's your kind of ideal picture of the ideal volunteer? Who are they? What's their persona?
That's a good question. I mean, people tend to think, oh, I need to be a technical wizard, and that's not the case. A lot of the things that we're asked to help with are fairly fundamental. You know, we might be helping somebody do an online grocery shop or something like that. You know, it's not particularly complicated for the likes of us who maybe do that regularly. So technical skills aren't the most important thing. I would say a willingness to help somebody and an interest in technology are as important.
Yeah,
definitely.
And can people request particular characteristics of their volunteers? You know, background or gender or anything like that? Are they able to specify?
Yeah, sometimes we do get requests for female volunteers, and we try and accommodate that if possible, but it's not always possible.
No, I was going to ask what the breakdown is. Do you get more men volunteering or women, or what's the?
We get far more men, but it's nice to see that we're getting more and more women. Definitely, it's definitely catching up.
And is there a certain age profile amongst your volunteers?
No, anything from 20. I think the oldest volunteer would be in their 80s.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I think we've got a lovely lady down in Exeter, and she's just perfect because she understands the challenges that the older community face. And, you know, she's just a brilliant volunteer.
Yeah, there's a volunteer. We're hoping to get her on the show sometime. She's won a digital champion recognition award from Digital Unite recently. Anne Saunders, she works with the Northfield Community Partnership Digital Literacy Project, and she's an amazing volunteer. She also volunteers at a library, I think, in one of the local areas. But yeah, she just is very patient. I think patience has been the main quality for volunteers that I've come across in digital sphere. You know, not rushing, not wanting to rush people into something, willing to repeat the same instructions or guidance over and over. And not kind of losing your temper when someone says, do you know my password?
Yes.
I think that's a common request. Any of us who help people technically
and
come across.
And almost translate things as well, from tech speak to the layman's terms. That's quite a skill.
Yeah.
As well. And a fair number of our clients have communication challenges as well. They could be a stroke survivor and maybe their speech is affected, or they could be hard of hearing. So that does require a degree of patience. You're absolutely right, Pauline.
Yeah. And so what kind of, on the technical tools side of things, what kind of tools are available that could help people that people might not know about? And assuming we don't know anything, so please do be as basic as you like.
You mean tools to help the client?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about accessibility?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the most basic of devices now has got amazing accessibility, from display options to bump up the text size, looking at color inversion, things like that to make the screen easier to read. You've got text to speech. So that can help people who have issues with their dexterity. No, text to speech. Sorry. That can help people with visual impairment. And then you've got speech to text, which is where people, use their voice. We're seeing a lot more smart devices, things like Alexa coming online, and they can be a massive help, particularly for people who are visually impaired.
Can you give us an example where Alexa might be helpful?
Well, just even for making things like phone calls, you can ask Alexa to contact a certain person, listening to the radio, talking books, all those kind of things can be a huge boon for people with sight loss.
When Sweyn had one of your pages up earlier, AbilityNet pages, there was a mention of Capgemini. Is that a corporate partnership you were involved in, or you're involved in?
Yeah, we've been working with Capgemini for about a year now. So it's part of their corporate volunteering scheme. So we have quite a few volunteers coming from Capgemini, which is brilliant. We've also recently started working with BT, and we've had quite a few applications from BT staff, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And the quality has been really, really good. So that's quite exciting. We're getting a lot more coverage
great.
in certain cities.
Yeah.
As well, which is great.
So are these part of corporate social responsibility programs, or yeah,
absolutely, CSR?
Yeah, no, that's good to see that, because a lot of you kind of in the olden days, or at least and still even sometimes now, corporate CSR programs can be the kind of paint your building type ones, and not the technical skills that some of us can benefit more from. So it's good to see that happening. And Capgemini, we mentioned previously, again in connection with Digital Unite, because they did a program, an employee volunteering program with them called Inspire. So I think they've, Capgemini are kind of becoming a regular mention on this program anyway, as a company that has kind of discovered that this is a great place to be able to help people from. So
definitely, we had a really nice webinar with Capgemini as part of Volunteers Week this year. Sweyn, you were part of that, and it was just nice to hear from them, and why they think corporate social responsibility is such an important thing.
Yeah, good. So Jamie, if you kind of were looking forward now, it's 2023. In another few years, what kind of things can you see happening, or that you think need to happen to make it a more level playing field, continuing on the great work that AbilityNet is already doing?
I mean, more volunteers would always be a good thing. I always try and put myself in the position of the client, as somebody who has maybe not used technology before. It must be quite daunting and quite overwhelming sometimes. If you've never used a Windows machine or an Android phone or anything, to come to that from scratch is quite daunting. I would like to see some more simplification of devices. If there was an accessibility mode that you could switch these devices into, that made everything a lot more straightforward. I think that would make everyone's life quite a bit easier. Because you think about all the devices we use, there's a huge amount of stuff that we never use. It just complicates things. And it puts people off, and you don't want to put people off. You want to do the opposite. You want to get them engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about AI? Can you see potential in AI for digital inclusion?
Yes, definitely. I'm not quite sure how that's going. Do any of us? Certainly for providing help and support. I think if there was an automated system which would help diagnose the trouble that somebody was having with technical, maybe people could get more self-help. That might be an application of AI.
Yeah. The big I think the big issue for many of us in the world generally is loneliness. Can you see, has AbilityNet enabled kind of a decrease in loneliness with some people?
Oh, absolutely. The amount of people that are still isolated, it hasn't gone back to where it was after the pandemic. And we suddenly realized that a lot of people were isolated before the pandemic as well. So yeah, it's all about communication, putting people in touch with other people, making sure they get the right support. So yeah, trying to combat that isolation is really important.
Yeah, good. Well, we're gonna cover some of the stories that we have come across in the last week or so. But Jamie, please stay with us and please do comment on them. If people want to contact you after the show, where's the best place to find you online?
Well, our website is just abilitynet.org.uk. There's a section there about receiving IT support if you're looking for support for yourself or for a relative. So Sweyn, if you go up to the top left-hand corner, free tech support and information.
Okay, yeah.
And then
All
down
right,
to
great.
free request free IT support at home.
Okay.
So that tells you how you can contact us. There's a free helpline, there's an email address, and there's a form further down as well. So you can request support that way or request support for somebody else.
Right.
Brilliant.
And if
Yeah.
you're
Simple.
interested in volunteering, if you go back to that menu, Sweyn.
I'm getting remote support here. It's quite good.
Yeah. I feel like saying next slide, please. So if you go to the free tech support and down to the bottom,
Join
it
our
says join our volunteers. So there's a
Okay.
wealth of information there about what's involved in volunteering. There's a role description at the very bottom of the screen and two very prominent apply online buttons. Just think.
No, really, apply
Yeah,
online.
please.
And some pictures of some of your existing volunteers. If they're not you know, they're are they actual volunteers pictured on the screen or
They're all real.
on that picture?
Yes.
Yeah, great, good to know. So Sweyn's got
Anyway,
the
I'm
volunteer
getting
role profile on the screen now.
deeper
Yeah.
and deeper into this now. So
Yeah.
So you can. Do you want to apply just now, Sweyn?
I might well apply, but not before the end of the summer.
Right. Okay.
Can people do like micro volunteering? You know, can they just kind of pop in and out, or do you need people to commit for a longer period, Jamie?
It's really flexible, Pauline. It's what we say. You do as much as you're comfortable with.
I thought there was a really good description of that from one of the Capgemini volunteers at that webinar, where he was saying, you know, some weeks he's snowed under with work and he can't really give much time at all, if any. Other weeks things are a bit easier and he can, you know, spend a couple of hours here and there doing stuff. So yeah, I was quite impressed by the total flexibility that he was kind of talking about there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our volunteers work full time and they fit this in around it. So when you get a request as a volunteer, you've got two options. You can either accept it or you can reject it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that we can hopefully find another volunteer to cover it. So the pressure is you know, is hopefully reduced.
That's really good, because one of the things that Freddie Queck, our a previous guest, had on and he was talking about his digital inclusion infographic. What was digital skills, digital support, you know, so kind of being able to just move on to the next person who can help is sounds like a brilliant way of using the resources that, you know, people are making available. Because I'd be certainly interested in that as well, and sort of I could maybe encourage other people that I come across to get involved, because I think people it helps build your confidence as well, doesn't it, in your own technical skills, if you can help other people, even on a small scale.
It really does. And when you get that feedback from a client, it just keeps you going. You know, it's its own reward. It really is.
Absolutely. So you gather information all the time, presumably for your reports and stuff, about the difference that volunteers are making and kind of the help people are getting.
We do. We would publish an annual report, our impact report. We ask the volunteers to log the number of hours that they spend on requests. So that could be time with the actual client, research time, traveling time, and we work that total number figure into something called the public benefit. So that's how much it puts a value against the amount of work that all our amazing volunteers do. Don't ask me what the public benefit is for last year.
Probably also available on your
website. Online. Yes,
it's available easily online.
It's a massive figure. Sometimes we hear from clients who say, "Oh, you know, I had to get somebody private in to help me," and the rates that people are being charged, it's incredible.
Yes.
You know, £40 an hour to install a printer, things like that.
Yeah. Before you go, sorry, Jim, before we finish with you and move on to the other stories, are there other agencies in the sector that you deal with on a regular basis that AbilityNet deals with?
Oh, I've lost track of the number of agencies that we work with, honestly. Every day there's something else. I've mentioned a few of them. People like the Stroke Association, a lot of social prescribers. So these are people that work with local councils. we get referrals from them. We get referrals from the NHS. Every day, there's a batch of referrals come in, which is great because we've maybe got the boots on the ground that they don't. But it's nice that they trust their clients with us as well. And we've got a really good working relationship. We recently established a good relationship with Age Scotland as well. And they're a super organisation. It's nice to be working closely with them.
Right, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. And sorry, do you have any personal socials that people can follow you on or contact you? Are you on LinkedIn or Twitter or any of the others?
I'm not on any of those things, no.
Okay.
But no, just if anyone wants to speak to me anymore, just speak to the helpline, contact the central number, and I'm easily contactable via that.
Okay.
Or via Sweyn. Sweyn can pass on messages.
Yes, I can pass messages on.
Excellent. Good.
Okay.
Okay, so the first of the stories that we're moving on to is about a 5-step plan to beat your phone addiction.
Yes.
I'm not sure I want to hear this, but anyway, this was something from someone who shared called Matt Gray, and he said for a period in 2022 he was doing 4 hours of iPhone screen time, and he found that during that
only
time,
4.
Well, in 2022, during this time, he said he had no energy, it was a lack of productivity, and had low sleep scores and fitness performance. So he executed the 5 following tips, which were to, first of all, go on a digital cleanse, which meant deleting apps that he rarely used, moving the apps he sometimes used off the home screen, and of the apps that were important but distracting, we can all mention them. He logged out of them and turned notifications off, which basically set up his digital environment for a successful cleanse. Then he implemented a phone-free day. Apparently, he says reports show that 90% of young adults feel a phantom vibration syndrome. So they feel the phone moving even when it's not, and that's why they keep taking the phone out of their pocket and checking it. So this phone-free day meant locking away his phone once a week, finding that he got better sleep and rest. He trained himself to be comfortable in peace, and he broke the constant craving for notifications. Then he says he adjusted his native phone settings. Everything on your phone, as we all know, is meant to keep you engaged, and he's saying learn to reprogram it to keep you away, to reduce all notifications, to set time limits on every distracting app, and turn on grayscale settings to remove vibrant colors. Great tips, which I will endeavor to do some of them anyway. I have managed to move my phone out of my bedroom and into my living room at night, so for me that's a huge win. So yeah, some of these things we can do. Number 4 in Mark's list is to build physical boundaries, and this was about the thing about changing your physical location. He says reshape your physical location to remove touch points with your phone. Don't use your phone as an alarm clock, which I was doing, and charge your phone on the kitchen counter, which I am doing now, and keep it in a far kitchen drawer when working at your desk. Well, no, I can't say I'm doing that. I've got it here right beside me, even when I'm working here on the program. Yeah, great idea. And his last tip was to practice usage with intention. For 1 week, every time you use your phone, he says you must write out your intention in a notebook, pick up your phone, accomplish the task, and set it down, and your efficiency will skyrocket. Well, marvelous. Yes. Highly recommend all of those. Will I do
For
it?
everybody
I don't
else.
know. Sweyn, what do you think?
Yes. I highly recommend them all for everybody else to do. Yeah, it's a bit like these time efficiency tips that you get. I mean, they are brilliant, and some of them for each of us will hit us more personally than others, perhaps. So it's certainly a list of things to really think about.
Yeah. Any of them really strike home with you?
Oh, quite a lot.
Jamie, what about you? Any of those ring any bells?
Oh yeah, the thing that struck me there was that certainly the early tips there, it was almost like they were talking about junk food and empty calories and unsatisfying experience. So I think it's interesting that his sleep was better, his concentration, and that's as good a thing to aim for as any. So yeah,
Yeah.
I will think about that actually.
Yeah, the sleep thing is very interesting because if things are interfering with your sleep, then they're interfering with your life. So yeah, I hadn't actually read the 5th section there about writing everything down in a notebook in advance and then writing it up as a
Can you
as
imagine?
a thing done. Wow, I'd like to try that for a morning and see how I get on.
Yes, I think I find it very frustrating, but also probably very useful as well. And it's ironic because, you know, we've got Jamie on, who's kind of with an organization that's all about helping people, you know, digitally and help people with their technology and stuff. And here we're talking about kind of moving away from it, and it's finding the balance, isn't it? Because for me, you know, as I got older and kind of always having loved technology, I'm become more and more clear that the technology is meant to be a kind of an add-on, a kind of a thing that helps you get on with your real life, you know, and meeting people face to face and being with family, as I have been over the last couple of days, is so much more important to me than having a device. So I like having a working device, but only as it helps me, you know, live a better life. I don't want to be on it all the time. So yeah, I'll try and practice some of these practices myself and see how we get on.
So are the two of you going to report back at your next podcast and see how you got on?
Only to each other.
We'll do a special edition where we read out from our notebook everything that we did on our phones for a week.
Yes.
That'd be exciting.
Man, imagine if we do that. I mean, I'd be writing down, you know, spent 5 minutes looking for a recipe, and then another hour scrolling through Facebook Reels. I mean, you know, we can have a confession time here, but yeah, it is, but it's meant to. And you know, that's why I say to other people when I'm supporting them, I don't give them a hard time for getting distracted or not doing what they thought they were going to do or whatever. It's the devices are there. They're explicitly and implicitly trying to captivate your attention. So, you know, if they're doing their job, we just have to be a bit more savvy and resistant to that, you know. And yeah, criticizing the tech is now my new kind of line of inquiry and sort of encouragement for other people as well. Okie doke. So the next story is about libraries. We haven't talked about libraries for a while, Sweyn. You know, we always talk about a lot in the early days of the program. But we do still think they're marvelous, and we're very pleased to see this tweet about libraries playing a vital role in tackling digital exclusion. We knew they always did. We always knew they did, and we knew they always did. But it's great to see it mentioned again. And this is from a tweet from Libraries Connected. And they refer to new research published on the 14th of June by the Good Things Foundation, revealing, sharing, exposing, whatever, that libraries in England, yes, libraries in England this is in England only, mind you, Sweyn. I've just noticed that, play a vital role. I'm sure they play a vital role in Scotland as well in tackling digital exclusion, both as an individual service offer and perhaps more importantly, as part of a wider system of support for their communities. So there's a full report there, and research found that library services described as positive, trusted, universal and free, hopefully that'll long stay that way, are already playing an essential role in fixing the digital divide alongside community organisations and others in communities. Over 80% of library services expressed confidence they were meeting the right needs, and 3 in 10 library services are found to be early adopters of digital inclusion and innovation, registering for schemes like the National Data Bank, which provides free mobile data connectivity for people who need it through local data bank partners. Research also found that 7 in 10 library services already use Good Things Foundation free digital learning platform Learn My Way to help people learn basic digital skills, and all library services offer free public Wi-Fi in most of their branches, whether for anyone or for members only. Findings also saw a strong appetite for library services to evolve their digital inclusion provision and partnerships. Around 60% of services report they are developing or want to develop offers of giving devices to people for use outside the library to the National Device Bank and providing free mobile data connectivity through the National Data Bank. There's a growing demand for help with things like online form filling, for health benefits or council services, but obviously limited by limited staff, volunteers, funding, and for some outdated IT infrastructure. But enabling libraries to play their best role in supporting digital inclusion is vital in a context where in the UK today around 10 million adults, as we know, still lack foundation level digital skills. Around 2 million households have no home internet access, and at least 2 million households struggle to afford broadband or mobile data connectivity, all things we've referred to previously on this show. So the challenges for government and local authorities to do more to recognise and resource the essential work carried out by libraries, community organisations and others across the country in supporting digitally excluded people. So I think all of that we can definitely relate to. Jamie, I'm wondering, libraries often do encourage people to use Learn My Way. Are libraries aware of the AbilityNet, My Computer My Way, and the resources that AbilityNet offers?
That's a good question. I mean, whenever we bring new volunteers on board, we encourage them to publicise the service. And one of the things we do is, we stick up a poster in your local library. We're very, very aware of the role that libraries have to play. And when people are looking for more training rather than support, we often say, we'll speak to your library. And also Learn My Way is a resource that we often promote. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, good. Well, it's good to hear that you're also working with libraries. We do think they're a vital resource.
Absolutely.
and need to be professionally staffed and kind of for the support to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have time for one or two more stories. Is that right, Sweyn? Okay. So the next one is police warning Android phone users over 999 call feature, and this is a story on the BBC website. So police forces across the UK have warned that a new feature on some Android phones is plaguing switchboards with inadvertent silent 999 calls. And this is an emergency SOS feature which calls when a side button is pressed repeatedly. And police chiefs think this is part of the reason for record numbers of 999 calls. Google, which develops the most widely used Android phone software, says it expects manufacturers to update issues to address the problem. Smartphones that run on Android operating systems include Samsung's Galaxy, Google's Pixel, and OnePlus handsets. And the National Police Chiefs Council said the new update to Android software added a new SOS emergency function for devices to call 999 through the power button being pressed 5 times or more. And this has resulted in nationally all emergency services currently experiencing record high 999 call volumes. So sorry, that's not a, and therefore the report is that there is a new button, and also nationally emergency services are experiencing record high 999 call volumes. They're saying the new button may have a significant impact on this increased number. So there's guidance on how to disable the feature, and can be found on manufacturers' websites, and we'll obviously include this in the notes to the show on YouTube after the show goes out. Most handsets do allow users to turn off the emergency SOS call option in their settings, typically accessed by visiting safety and emergency options in settings and tapping the emergency SOS toggle to off, or by searching for emergency call in settings. So there's something maybe we've learned about how to turn off a feature that might be having a detrimental effect. So yeah, that might be useful to some people. Great. Let's try and cover the last two stories before we finish for today, Sweyn, if that's okay.
Fine.
I think they're actually possibly linked. Yes, actually they are. The first one was a story from Eleanor Crouch of the Digital Poverty Alliance, great friends of ours on the show. On LinkedIn, she shared a post from Computer Weekly article which said that political lethargy is to blame for digital exclusion, according to the House of Lords. Government plans to be a science and technology superpower do not take into account the extent of digital exclusion in the UK, according to a report from the House of Lords. I think you've switched stories there, Sweyn. You've gone on to the last one.
So I have.
It's the same story, really.
Yes.
Anyway, the report from the House of Lords says that the government does not have a credible strategy for closing the digital inclusion gap, which will not only prevent the UK from reaching the level of technological prowess the government is aiming for, but is also preventing a large percentage of the population from participating in day-to-day activities where digital connection and savvy is increasingly required. Elizabeth Anderson, the interim CEO at Digital Poverty Line, said, "We live in a digital economy where participation in basic daily activities that many of us take for granted requires access to or skills relating to technology. And for many, this is a given, but there are 11 million people across the UK experiencing digital exclusion. This means lacking access to equipment, connectivity, and skills. So for the UK to achieve its goal of becoming a tech and science superpower, more must be done to support those who lack access, which will not only provide them with increased opportunities, but will help support the growth of the economy." And then the second article was from the actual House of Parliament committee itself, repeating most of what I've just said, actually. It does say, despite aiming to make the UK the centre of AI regulation internationally, the government does not have a credible plan to tackle digital exclusion. In fact, they say the last digital inclusion strategy was published in 2014.
Wow.
So that's just not good enough. And the
Wow.
problem, obviously, then is being exacerbated by the cost of living crisis, which is forcing more households to cut back or cancel their internet packages. So the report was published by the Communications and Digital Committee. The effect is having multi-million pound impact on economic growth, public health, and levelling up. It actually costs the economy, it says, overall digital skills shortages cost the economy up to £63 billion a year. I mean, really, that's just stark, really. The committee sounds the alarm about deepening disadvantage as the rapid shift towards online services accelerates, and those who remain offline fall even further behind. Already, 90% of jobs are only advertised online. But the growing use of machine learning in public and private sector services will further disadvantage digitally excluded groups who are often poorly represented in data sets and are likely to face further marginalization as a result. This is really critical, guys.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, yeah, I'm glad we were able to cover that story, and maybe we'll try and get someone else on to talk about it. We have talked to Elizabeth about getting her on the show. Actually, I think it'd be good to talk about that, because
Yeah.
if we can affect this situation, I think we could all think that was a good thing to do. Okay, we've run over slightly. Jamie, thanks again for joining us on the show. I'm sure AbilityNet is contributing to discussions like this as well with the government.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, but it's depressing, isn't it, to hear that there are fewer people connected now than there were 12 months ago. It's just the wrong way to go.
Yeah, cost of living, people's, kind of having adopted digital practices because they were afraid and felt isolated, and it's got to be analysed a bit better. But if government hasn't had a digital inclusion strategy since 2014, that speaks for itself, really. We can't allow that to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again, Jamie, for joining us. Thanks,
Sweyn.
Sweyn, for being my co-host today. Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you have a great week. Bye.
Bye.